Imagine having an ancient playbook written over 2,500 years ago that reveals the exact secrets military commanders used to conquer kingdoms. Imagine knowing the psychological warfare tactics that still work today in business, relationships, and life itself. What if you could understand the deepest strategic principles that have influenced everyone from Napoleon to modern tech CEOs? What if everything you thought you knew about competition was backwards? This is The Power of the Art of War by Sun Tzu. Today on Audiobook Gist, we're diving into one of the most transformative texts ever written. This isn't just about warfare. This is about understanding human nature, competition, strategy, and how to achieve victory in any arena you choose. Understanding the historical context. Before we dive into the principles, let's understand where this wisdom comes from. Sun Tzu lived during the ancient Chinese spring and autumn period, around the 6th century BC. This was an era of constant warfare between different kingdoms and states in China. It was brutal, chaotic, and unforgiving. Only the wisest military strategists survived and thrived. Sun Tzu served as a military general during this period. He didn't just theorize about warfare, he lived it. He commanded armies. He won battles. He saw firsthand what strategies worked and which ones led to catastrophic failure. The principles in this book came from decades of practical experience. What makes his teachings revolutionary is that they transcend his era. While the specific examples involve ancient warfare, the underlying psychological and strategic principles apply universally. They apply to business competition, political campaigns, athletic competition, artistic endeavors, and personal development. They apply because they're rooted in fundamental truths about human nature and strategy. The military theorists and strategists who came after Sun Tzu for the next 2,500 years recognized the genius in his work. Napoleon studied it. Military academies across the world still teach it. Business schools reference it. Tech entrepreneurs read it. Why? Because the principles work. They work because they're true. The foundation, laying the groundwork for victory. Sun Tzu opens his masterpiece with a deceptively simple statement: victory is determined before the battle begins. Let this sink in. The outcome is already decided before any actual conflict occurs. This is revolutionary thinking, because most people believe that whoever fights hardest, whoever is strongest, whoever has the most resources will win. Sun Tzu says that's naive. Victory is determined by who has superior positioning, superior information, superior strategy, and superior psychological advantage. The actual fighting is almost secondary. Think about this in your own life. How many times have you seen someone with more resources or more talent lose to someone with less of both? Why does that happen? It happens because the person with less had something more valuable, superior strategy and positioning. This requires a fundamental shift in how you approach competition and challenges. Instead of asking, how do I win this fight? You should ask, how do I position myself so I don't have to fight, or so the fight is already won before it starts? This is what Sun Tzu calls supreme victory, not the victory where you barely triumph after a grueling battle. That's inferior victory. Supreme victory is when the outcome is so certain that the actual contest is almost anticlimactic. Your enemy sees the position you've established and realizes they've already lost. Self-knowledge, the first requirement. Sun Tzu teaches that the first requirement for victory is knowing yourself. Not in a philosophical sense, in a practical, tactical sense. What are your actual strengths? Not what you wish your strengths were, not what you want to believe. What are they actually? This requires brutal honesty. You must understand exactly what you're good at and exactly where you're limited. You must know your resources, not just financial resources, but human resources, time resources, knowledge resources, and network resources. You must understand your constraints. Every organization, every person has constraints. Those who pretend they don't are already defeated. Consider a military general who leads an army of expert archers, but few cavalry troops. If that general understands their strength, they'll position their army in terrain and situations that favor ranged combat. They won't try to compete in open field cavalry charges where their weakness is exposed. They'll fight battles where their strength is decisive. Now consider the general who doesn't understand their own army. They might commit their archers to situations where archery is useless. They might send their small cavalry contingent into situations where it gets slaughtered, because they're pretending they have the numerical advantage they don't actually possess. Your own situation is similar. If you're a solopreneur, you can't compete directly with large corporations using their strategies. You'll lose. But if you understand that your advantage is agility, customization, and personalized service, you can dominate in areas where those strengths matter most. If you're an athlete with exceptional technical skill but average strength, you can't beat the strongest competitors through raw power. But if you understand your strength and position yourself in situations where technique dominates, you'll prevail. This applies to every domain. Know yourself. This isn't optional. This is foundational. Knowing your enemy. The second requirement. The second requirement is knowing your opponent. Again, not in a vague sense, in a specific, detailed, tactical sense. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What do they prioritize? What do they overlook? How do they typically respond to pressure? What are their resources? Sun Tzu teaches that the best way to know your enemy is through intelligence. Gather information. Study their past behavior. Understand their patterns. Talk to people who've dealt with them. Research everything you can. In ancient warfare, this meant spies and scouts. In modern times, this means market research, competitive analysis, studying past cases, interviewing customers, and understanding the competitive landscape. The stunning truth is that most people skip this step. They rush into competition without truly understanding who they're up against. Then they're shocked when things don't work out. Sun Tzu teaches that if you know your enemy through careful study, you're already halfway to victory. Here's the deeper insight. You might find that after truly studying your supposed enemy, you realize they're not actually your enemy. Maybe you're not in direct competition. Maybe there's space for both of you. Maybe there's a way to collaborate. Or maybe you realize that competing directly against this entity is suicide, and you should find a different battlefield entirely. This intelligence gathering prevents stupid, wasteful conflicts. It channels your energy towards situations where you have an actual advantage. Knowing the situation, the third requirement. Beyond knowing yourself and knowing your enemy, you must know the situation. What is the current state of the market, environment, or competitive landscape? What are the macro trends? What are the micro details that matter? In warfare, this includes understanding terrain, weather, seasonal factors, morale, supply lines, and the political situation. A general might have the best army and understand their enemy perfectly, but if they're fighting in winter in unfamiliar mountains far from their supply lines, they're handicapped. The same applies to business. Economic conditions matter. Technological shifts matter. Cultural trends matter. The timing of your entry into a market matters. Whether the market is growing or contracting matters immensely. If you're launching a product into a declining market, you're fighting the situation itself. All your skill and resources might not overcome the headwind of market forces working against you. But if you understand the situation and wait for market conditions to shift, you might launch the same product into a growing market and achieve enormous success with less effort. Sun Tzu teaches that understanding the situation often reveals the path forward. Sometimes the situation tells you this isn't the right time. Sometimes it tells you this isn't the right approach. Sometimes it reveals an obvious opportunity that's invisible to people who aren't paying attention to the actual situation. The principle of knowing, the guarantee of victory. Sun Tzu crystallizes this with one of his most famous statements: if you know yourself, and you know your enemy, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself but not your enemy, for every victory you'll suffer a defeat. If you know neither yourself nor your enemy, you'll be defeated in every single battle. Let this sink in. This is him saying that victory is determined by knowledge, by understanding, by accurate information about the situation. The side with superior knowledge has superior strategy. The side with superior strategy wins. This has profound implications. It means that victory is available to anyone who's willing to do the work of gathering accurate information and understanding reality as it actually is. You don't need to be the strongest. You don't need the most resources. You need to be more aware, more informed, more realistic about the actual situation. Strategy, positioning for inevitable victory. Now that we understand the foundation, that victory is determined by knowledge and preparation, let's discuss the next level, actual strategy. Sun Tzu teaches that strategy is about positioning. It's about creating situations where your strengths are maximized and your opponent's strengths are neutralized. Consider two armies of equal size and quality. One general positions their army on high ground that only allows frontal assault. The other general positions their army in a valley where they can't be outflanked. These different positions create vastly different strategic situations even though the armies are equal. The army on high ground has an enormous advantage. Attacking uphill is harder. The high ground provides visibility and defense. The army in the valley has chosen poor positioning and suffers accordingly. Now scale this up. Think about market positioning, competitive positioning, and strategic positioning in any domain. Companies often fail not because their products aren't good, but because they have positioned themselves in a way that makes success harder than necessary. A company trying to compete directly with giants like Microsoft or Amazon faces an uphill battle, but a company that finds a niche where those giants aren't focused and dominates that niche might succeed spectacularly. The second company has better positioning, the ART of deception and perception. Sun Tzu dedicates significant attention to deception, and we need to understand what he means. When he talks about deception, he's not necessarily talking about lying or dishonesty in a moral sense. He's talking about strategic perception management and creating favorable conditions through how situations are perceived. He teaches, appear weak when you are strong. Appear strong when you are weak. Let your enemy make assumptions about your capabilities that work in your favor. If you can make them believe you're not a serious threat, they won't prepare for you. If you can make them believe you have capabilities you don't actually have, they'll be cautious and ineffective. The principle is that your opponent's perception of reality matters more than reality itself for their decision-making. If they believe you have overwhelming resources, they'll make cautious decisions that serve you. If they believe you're committed to one strategy, they won't defend against your actual strategy. In business, this is brand positioning and marketing. Tesla didn't have the resources of traditional automakers, but they created the perception that they were the future of automotive innovation. That perception, strategically cultivated, helped them overcome the massive disadvantage in resources and manufacturing experience. In negotiations, how you present yourself, your options, and your constraints shapes how the other party responds. If you appear desperate, they'll take advantage. If you appear to have options and flexibility, they'll negotiate more reasonably. In sports, psychology matters enormously. If your opponent believes you're unbeatable, they'll play tighter, more conservatively. If they believe they can beat you, they'll play looser and more confidently. The perception shapes the outcome. Sun Tzu teaches that managing perception strategically isn't dishonest if it's based on reality. If you actually are strong but you choose to appear weak to lull your opponent into complacency, that's strategic. When they finally encounter your actual strength, they're unprepared. That's not dishonesty, that's strategy, terrain and geographic advantage. Sun Tzu emphasizes that terrain is absolutely fundamental to military success. Different terrains favor different types of armies and different strategies. This principle extends far beyond literal geography. In literal military terms, mountains favor defensive positions and disciplined troops. Open plains favor cavalry and fast-moving forces. Forests provide cover and neutralize numerical advantages. Rivers create barriers and choke points. Marshes slow down heavy equipment and organize formations. A brilliant general understands how to use terrain. They position their army in terrain where their strengths are maximized and the enemy's strengths are minimized. A general with excellent cavalry but weak infantry chooses open plains. A general with excellent archers and defensive formations chooses high ground and forests. But here's where it gets interesting for modern application. In contemporary contexts, terrain includes the market landscape, the competitive environment, the economic conditions, the technological infrastructure, and the regulatory environment. Consider an entrepreneur launching a new product. The terrain includes whether the market is growing or shrinking, whether consumer sentiment is favorable or skeptical, whether technology is enabling or inhibiting their solution, whether regulations help or hinder their approach. If an entrepreneur launches a product that requires a specific technology that doesn't exist yet, they're fighting through terrible terrain. If they wait for that technology to mature and then launch, they're fighting on favorable terrain. The product might be identical, but the terrain makes all the difference. Similarly, launching during economic booms is easier terrain than launching during recessions. Launching into markets that are growing is easier than launching into mature or declining markets. Understanding the terrain and waiting for favorable terrain is strategic wisdom. Timing, the unseen force. Related to terrain is the concept of timing. Even if your strategy is perfect and your positioning is ideal, if you execute at the wrong time, you'll fail. Conversely, if your strategy is mediocre but you execute at the perfect time, you might succeed anyway because timing carries such weight. Sun Tzu teaches that timing includes understanding seasons, understanding the readiness of your forces, understanding the enemy's state of mind, and understanding the broader historical moment. In ancient warfare, fighting in winter is harder than fighting in spring. Soldiers are cold, supplies are harder to transport, disease is more prevalent. Fighting when your troops are well rested and ready is better than fighting when they're exhausted. Fighting when your enemy is complacent is better than fighting when they're alert and prepared. The same applies to modern contexts. Launching a product when the market is ready is better than launching when it's not. Asking for investment when investors are confident is better than asking when they're fearful. Starting a project when you have momentum is better than starting when you're exhausted. Entrepreneurs often say that timing was the key factor in their success. They might have created a similar product years earlier that would have failed, but they created it at the right moment when market conditions, technology, and consumer sentiment all aligned. That timing was crucial. The 5 constant factors that determine victory. Sun Tzu identifies 5 elements that determine the outcome of any conflict. These 5 factors are so fundamental that understanding them shapes how you approach any challenge. The first is the moral law. This is your purpose. This is why you're doing what you're doing. What principles guide your actions? What do you stand for? Those who fight for something they deeply believe in are vastly more motivated and resilient than those fighting purely for money or because they're forced to. History shows this repeatedly. An army fighting for their homeland, for their families, for their freedom, will fight harder and longer than a mercenary force fighting purely for payment. A team united around a mission will outwork a team that's just there for paychecks. The second factor is heaven. In modern terms, this represents timing, opportunity, and environmental factors that are somewhat beyond your control. These are the macro forces. Economic cycles, technological revolutions, cultural shifts, and seasonal factors fall into this category. The third factor is earth. This is terrain, geography, and the physical environment. This includes market conditions, competitive landscape, and the physical constraints of your situation. Some environments are naturally favorable for certain types of competition. Others are naturally unfavorable. The fourth factor is the commander. This is leadership quality. A great leader makes average people extraordinary. A mediocre leader makes even excellent people perform poorly. The quality of leadership matters tremendously. A visionary, intelligent, decisive commander can lead an ordinary army to victory. A poor commander can lead an elite army to defeat. The fifth factor is method and discipline. This is your systems, your organization, your processes, and your ability to execute consistently. Brilliant strategy means nothing without good execution. Great ideas without disciplined implementation are worthless. Sun Tzu teaches that all 5 factors must be managed and optimized. If you neglect any one, you create a vulnerability. A team with incredible purpose and great leadership but no systems and discipline will still fail. An organization with great processes but no clear purpose will flounder. You must attend to all 5, the 9 types of terrain, and how to conquer them. Sun Tzu categorizes different strategic situations into 9 types of terrain, each requiring different approaches and strategies. The first is dispersed terrain. This is when your own forces are fragmented or distributed. In this situation, the key is to unite your forces. Don't engage the enemy until you're consolidated. Unity is critical. The second is facile terrain. This is easy terrain where either side can move freely. In this terrain, the advantage goes to whoever maintains the best communication and coordination. You must stay connected with your forces. The third is contentious terrain. This is terrain that both sides want to control because it offers advantages. Here, the key is to reach it first and hold it. Whoever secures contentious terrain has the advantage. The fourth is open terrain. This is open ground that favors mobility and speed. Here, you want your fastest, most agile forces to prevail. Heavy, slow forces are disadvantaged. The fifth is focal terrain. This is terrain with narrow passages or choke points. Here, whoever controls the choke point controls everything. It's like controlling a bridge or a mountain pass. The force that can defend a choke point against a larger force has the advantage. The sixth is serious terrain. This is difficult terrain deep in enemy territory. Once you're committed, retreat is costly. In serious terrain, you must be fully committed, and you must have superior morale and unity because the situation is desperate if things go wrong. The seventh is difficult terrain. This is rough, mountainous terrain where movement is hard for everyone. In difficult terrain, the key is to know the terrain better than your enemy. If you've scouted it thoroughly and your enemy hasn't, you have the advantage. The eighth is hemmed-in terrain. This is terrain where you're surrounded or blocked in. Your escape routes are limited. In hemmed-in terrain, the key is to make your soldiers understand that retreat isn't possible. With their backs to the wall, they fight hardest. Paradoxically, being trapped can make your soldiers fight with greater intensity. The ninth is desperate terrain. This is terrain where you can only survive through immediate victory. You're in grave danger. Defeat means annihilation. In desperate terrain, your soldiers understand that victory is the only option. This understanding can make them fight with unparalleled ferocity. The genius here is that Sun Tzu recognizes that different situations require different approaches. The strategy that works on facile terrain fails on difficult terrain. The approach for open terrain doesn't work for hemmed-in terrain. This teaches a crucial modern lesson: situational awareness matters. You must recognize what type of situation you're actually in and apply the appropriate strategy for that specific situation. Too many people apply a one-size-fits-all approach regardless of the actual situation they face. Attack by stratagem, indirect approaches. Sun Tzu teaches that the indirect approach is often more powerful than the direct approach. In warfare, if two armies clash head-to-head, the battle is determined by brute force and luck. But if one army uses strategy and deception to attack the enemy's weakness, while defending their own weakness, the strategic army wins. He teaches 5 methods of attack. The first is to attack their strategy. You don't even engage militarily. You undermine their plans and make their strategy ineffective. If you can prevent them from executing their plan, they're defeated without fighting. The second is to attack their alliances. You break apart their coalition. You make their allies uncertain or turn them against each other. A force loses power when it's fractured. The third is to attack their army. This is military engagement, but you engage in a way that advantages you. You pick the battlefield, the timing, and the circumstances. The fourth is to attack their fortress or stronghold. You assault their fortified position. The fifth is to attack their supplies. You cut off their supply lines, starve them, and weaken them before direct combat. Notice the order. Sun Tzu puts attacking their strategy first because if you can win without fighting, by making their strategy fail, that's superior to any military victory. The next levels are progressively more direct and more costly. This teaches that strategic victories are better than tactical victories. Undermining an enemy's strategy so they can't execute is better than winning a battle against them. Creating situations where their plan can't work is better than fighting them directly. In business, this applies as competitive strategy. Instead of competing head-to-head with a larger competitor, you attack their strategy by positioning yourself where their strategy doesn't apply. You attack their alliances by stealing their partners. You attack their supply chain by securing suppliers they need. You attack their fortress by going after their most profitable customers. The use of spies and intelligence. Sun Tzu devotes an entire section to intelligence gathering because he understands that information is your greatest weapon. The general with superior intelligence wins before the fighting starts. The general with poor intelligence fights blindly. He identifies 5 types of spies. The first are local spies, people from enemy territory who you recruit. They know the terrain, the people, the customs. The second are inside spies, people already within the enemy organization who you turn. The third are double spies, enemy spies who you've turned to work for you. These are incredibly valuable because your enemy thinks they're communicating with a loyal spy when they're actually feeding you information. The fourth are living spies, people who gather information and return to tell you what they learned. The fifth are dead spies. This doesn't mean killed spies. It means spies you feed false information to, knowing they'll be captured or the information will reach your enemy. You use them to spread misinformation. The deeper principle is that information is worth enormous investment. A small investment in intelligence can save massive losses in actual conflict. A spy that costs you a few gold coins might prevent a disaster that would cost thousands of gold coins and thousands of lives. In modern terms, this is market research, customer interviews, competitive analysis, and understanding what's actually happening in your market. Companies that invest heavily in understanding their customers, their competitors, and their market have enormous advantages over companies that just guess. The importance of morale and psychology. Throughout his work, Sun Tzu emphasizes that psychology is as important as physical capability. An army with superior morale and psychological confidence will outperform a physically superior army that's demoralized. The general must maintain the morale of their troops. How? Through fair treatment, clear communication, shared purpose, and successful experiences. Troops that trust their commander and believe in the mission will endure extraordinary hardship. Troops that don't trust their commander or believe in the mission will collapse at the first difficulty. He teaches that the general must inspire through their own behavior. If the general is calm and confident, the troops feel calm and confident. If the general is panicked and indecisive, the troops lose faith. In modern contexts, this is leadership psychology. A manager who maintains team morale, communicates clearly, treats people fairly, and provides opportunities for success will have a high-performing team. A manager who's aloof, unclear, treats people badly, and doesn't celebrate success will have a demoralized team that underperforms. The concept of momentum. One of Sun Tzu's most sophisticated concepts is momentum. He teaches that when you have momentum, you don't have to force everything. Events flow naturally in your direction. When you lack momentum, you have to force everything, and it's exhausting. Imagine a ball at the top of a hill. With a small push, it rolls down the hill with increasing speed. The momentum carries it, but if you try to push a ball uphill, you have to force it the entire way with no help from gravity. Sun Tzu teaches that strategy is partly about positioning yourself so that momentum is in your favor. When you create the right strategic position, when conditions align with your approach, when your team is winning and confident, everything becomes easier. This is momentum. Success creates momentum. Customers see you winning and want to work with you. Employees see success and become more engaged. Partners see your momentum and want to partner with you. This creates a virtuous cycle. Conversely, failure creates negative momentum. Failure discourages people. It makes customers skeptical. It makes employees doubt leadership. It creates a vicious cycle where each failure makes the next failure more likely. Sun Tzu teaches that once you have momentum, you protect it and exploit it. You keep moving. You don't pause. You maintain the pace and the intensity because momentum is fragile. If you lose momentum, it's hard to get it back. Flexibility and adaptation. Despite all this talk of strategy and positioning, Sun Tzu emphasizes that rigid adherence to plans is a recipe for failure. The general who commits to one plan and refuses to adapt when circumstances change will be defeated. He uses the metaphor of water. Water has no fixed shape. It conforms to the container it's poured into. Yet water is incredibly powerful. It wears away stone. It flows around obstacles. It finds its way everywhere. Sun Tzu teaches, be like water. Have principles, have strategy, but remain flexible in your tactics. The best generals don't rigidly follow plans. They respond to what's actually happening. They notice when something isn't working and shift immediately. They capitalize on unexpected opportunities. This is why successful entrepreneurs often say that their biggest wins came from a different idea than they started with. They had a plan, but they remained flexible. When they encountered something unexpected, they adapted. That flexibility was crucial to their success. This also applies to personal development. If you're pursuing a goal and you discover a better path halfway through, you have the flexibility to change paths. You don't have to rigidly pursue your original plan if circumstances have revealed a better approach. The key balance is this: have a clear strategy and direction, but remain flexible in how you execute. Don't mistake flexibility with having no strategy. A ship needs a destination to navigate, but the captain adjusts course based on weather and currents. The destination doesn't change, but the path does. Understanding the nature of competition. Sun Tzu teaches that competition exists on a spectrum. On one end is direct competition, head-to-head conflict. On the other end is positioning, creating advantages so you don't have to compete directly. He teaches that the wise competitor avoids direct competition when possible. Direct competition is costly, unpredictable, and risky. Instead, the wise competitor uses strategy to create advantages so that when direct competition is necessary, it's already decided in their favor. This applies to business strategy. A company that tries to directly compete with Microsoft or Apple in their core markets is fighting a terrible battle. But a company that positions itself in a niche where these giants aren't focused and dominates that niche succeeds. When the giants eventually notice and decide to compete, the dominant niche player already has advantages that make the competition difficult. The same applies to sports, relationships, creative fields, and personal development. Direct competition is seductive because it feels like you're fighting on a level playing field. But if you can use strategy and positioning to avoid direct competition or to tilt it in your favor, you're being smarter. The integration of all principles. As we come to understand Sun Tzu's complete system, we see that all these principles integrate. Knowledge informs strategy. Strategy informs positioning. Positioning creates momentum. Momentum enables flexibility because you're not struggling to survive. You're responding from a position of strength. The general who understands themselves and their enemy can choose terrain that advantages them. They maintain morale through clear communication and fair treatment. They gather intelligence and adapt based on what they learn. They create the right position before direct combat occurs. When fighting does occur, it's almost anticlimactic because the outcome is already determined by superior strategy. This isn't luck. This isn't inspiration. This is the systematic application of principles based on understanding how reality actually works. Applying the art of war to business. Let's examine how these principles apply specifically to business competition. A startup founder is competing against established corporations. The founder cannot win through direct competition on the corporation's chosen terrain. The corporation has more resources, more brand recognition, more distribution channels. But using Sun Tzu's principles, the founder can succeed. First, they know themselves, what they're exceptionally good at, and where they're limited. Second, they know their competitors, their strengths, weaknesses, and likely strategies. Third, they understand the situation, market trends, technological shifts, regulatory environment. Using this knowledge, the founder chooses positioning that advantages them. Maybe they focus on a customer segment the large corporations ignore. Maybe they use new technology that the corporations haven't adopted. Maybe they position around a value that corporations don't emphasize. The founder maintains morale by creating a clear mission that employees believe in. They gather intelligence about customer needs and market shifts. They adapt quickly based on what they learn. They build momentum through early wins. As momentum builds, other advantages follow. Better talent wants to join because the startup is winning. Customers are attracted. Partners want to work with them. Media covers their story. The momentum becomes self-reinforcing. By the time the large corporation realizes what's happening, the startup has already built an entrenched position that's hard to displace. The corporation, despite having more resources, finds that direct competition against the startup is difficult because the startup has chosen better positioning. Applying the art of war to athletic competition. In sports, Sun Tzu's principles apply directly. Consider an athlete competing against someone larger, stronger, and more physically gifted. The athlete cannot win through direct competition on raw physical capability. But using strategy, the athlete can win. The athlete understands themselves. They know their exceptional technical skill, their speed, their conditioning. They understand their opponent. They study their patterns, their tendencies, their weaknesses. They understand the situation, the specific sport, the rules, the conditions that will apply. The athlete develops a game plan that leverages their strengths against the opponent's weaknesses. Maybe they use superior conditioning to win late in the match when the stronger opponent tires. Maybe they use superior technique to neutralize size and strength. Maybe they maintain psychological confidence while the stronger opponent grows frustrated that their size advantage isn't working. The athlete practices deliberately to build the specific capabilities that will matter in competition. They visualize success to build confidence. They maintain morale and belief. They adapt during competition based on what the opponent is doing. By competition day, if the athlete has done this strategically, the physical difference between them and their stronger opponent matters far less than the strategic and psychological advantages the athlete has built. Applying the art of war to personal development. The principles even apply to personal development and achieving your goals. You have a goal you want to achieve. You know that many people pursue this same goal and many fail. Using Sun Tzu's principles, you increase your chances of success. First, you understand yourself. What are your natural strengths? What skills do you already have? What resources do you have access to? What are your genuine limitations? This is crucial. Most people have unrealistic understandings of their actual capabilities. Second, you understand the situation. What does achieving this goal actually require? What obstacles will you face? What's the current state of the field you're entering? What resources do you need? This is research and realistic planning. Third, you develop a strategy. You don't just charge ahead. You create a plan that leverages your specific strengths in a way that achieves your goal. You identify the critical path. What must happen for you to succeed? You work backwards from that. Fourth, you maintain morale and momentum. Personal development is a journey, not a single event. You need to maintain belief in yourself even when progress is slow. You create early wins that build momentum and confidence. Fifth, you adapt based on reality. You try your plan, you see what works and what doesn't, and you adjust. You remain flexible in your tactics while staying committed to your overall goal. By approaching personal development strategically rather than just through effort and willpower, you increase your chances of success dramatically. The timeless wisdom of indirect advantage. Throughout his work, Sun Tzu emphasizes that victories come from having advantages that your opponent doesn't expect or can't overcome. These advantages come from strategic positioning, from superior information, from psychological confidence, from momentum. The warrior who waits for the perfect position before engaging, who has gathered superior intelligence, who has chosen terrain that advantages them, who has superior morale, this warrior is essentially unbeatable. The outcome is already decided before the actual engagement occurs. This is why Sun Tzu says that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. The highest victory is when your strategic position is so superior that your opponent either surrenders without fighting or is defeated so easily that the victory is almost hollow. The practical application is profound. Instead of asking, how do I defeat this competitor or overcome this obstacle? Ask, how do I position myself so that this becomes easy or inevitable? Instead of asking, how do I win this conflict? Ask, how do I set up the situation so victory is assured? The role of discipline and preparation. Sun Tzu emphasizes repeatedly that victory belongs to those who have prepared better. The army that has trained, that has its logistics organized, that has its strategies worked out in advance, that has built the habits and systems needed for success, this army has an enormous advantage. This isn't glamorous. This is unglamorous preparation work. It's drilling, it's planning, it's organizing systems. It's training repeatedly, even when no one is watching. It's building the fundamentals until they become automatic. But this unglamorous preparation is what separates winners from losers. The athlete who has trained relentlessly has an advantage in competition. The business that has organized its operations efficiently has an advantage. The team that has practiced together repeatedly operates better under pressure. Sun Tzu teaches that you can observe the quality of an army by looking at its discipline. A disciplined army is organized, responsive, and effective. An undisciplined army is chaotic, unresponsive, and ineffective. Discipline isn't about harsh punishment. It's about clear expectations, consistent training, and organized systems. Understanding the cost of war. Interestingly, Sun Tzu spends time discussing the actual costs of warfare. He's not glorifying war. He's being practical. Wars are expensive. They cost money. They cost lives. They cost resources. A general who goes to war lightly, without understanding the costs, is foolish. This teaches an important principle: avoid unnecessary conflicts. Use strategy to avoid conflicts you don't need to fight. Use positioning to neutralize threats without fighting. Use intelligence to understand whether a conflict is even worth engaging in. In modern contexts, this means avoiding unnecessary business conflicts. Unnecessary lawsuits, unnecessary personal conflicts, and unnecessary confrontations. If you can achieve your goal without fighting, that's superior to achieving it through conflict. Sometimes conflict is necessary. When it is, fight with full commitment and intelligence. But many conflicts are avoidable if you're strategic and wise enough to avoid them. The concept of the perfect execution. Sun Tzu teaches that the ultimate expression of military genius is executing a perfect plan flawlessly. Not a plan where everything goes perfectly. Plans never go perfectly. But a plan that accounts for uncertainty, that builds in redundancy, that has contingencies. The general who has thought through what could go wrong and prepared responses is already ahead of the general who has just made assumptions. The general who has planned multiple approaches is more flexible than the general who has only one plan. This is why preparation and planning matter so much. The time you spend thinking through scenarios, planning responses, and preparing alternatives is time well spent, because when the unexpected occurs, and it always does, you're not starting from zero. The nature of speed and decisiveness. Sun Tzu teaches that speed and decisiveness are valuable, but only when combined with intelligence and preparation. Speed without intelligence is recklessness. Decisiveness without information is gambling. But intelligence combined with speed is devastating. The general who understands the situation and makes decisions quickly has advantages over the general who takes forever to decide, but at least has good information. He teaches that prolonged conflict is costly and dangerous. The longer a campaign goes, the more it costs, the more things can go wrong, the more your enemy can adapt. Therefore, the goal is to achieve victory quickly. But quick victory isn't about rushing or being rash. It's about having prepared so thoroughly that when you engage, you move rapidly to victory because you've thought through exactly what needs to happen. You've prepared your forces, you've chosen your position, and now you execute with speed and decisiveness. In business, this applies as speed to market. The company that can develop a good product quickly and get to market before competitors captures enormous advantage. But this speed is built on having organized systems and clear decision-making processes, not on recklessness. The role of innovation and unconventional tactics. While Sun Tzu emphasizes preparation and discipline, he also recognizes that innovation and unconventional tactics can create advantages. If every general uses the same tactics that worked in the past, then The general who discovers a new tactic has an enormous advantage. Historical examples abound. When cavalry was introduced to warfare, it changed everything. When archers became dominant, tactics shifted. When gunpowder was invented, everything changed again. The military powers that adapted to new technologies and tactics first had enormous advantages. The same applies to modern competition. The company that innovates first, that finds new ways to serve customers, that uses technology differently than competitors. This company has advantages. But the innovation must be built on a foundation of solid basics. Sun Tzu would recognize that innovation without discipline fails. A company might have a brilliant innovative idea, but if their operations are chaotic and undisciplined, they won't execute the innovation successfully. The best competitors combine innovation with discipline. Understanding the importance of supply lines, Sun Tzu emphasizes that supply lines are absolutely critical to military success. An army can have brilliant strategy and superior position, but if they can't feed themselves, if they can't get ammunition, if they can't get medical supplies, they'll fail. He teaches that a general must organize their logistics carefully. Supply lines must be protected. They must be reliable. They must be efficient. An army that's hungry and poorly supplied will be defeated even against an inferior enemy that's well supplied. This principle extends to modern contexts. In business, supply chains are critical. A company might have great products and great marketing, but if they can't reliably supply their customers, they fail. Think of any company that had a great product but couldn't scale production to meet demand. They lost market share to competitors who could supply. In personal development, supply lines are the resources, support systems, and foundations that sustain your progress. If you're working toward a goal but you don't have the knowledge you need, the support system you need, or the financial resources you need, you'll struggle. The cycle of advantage. Sun Tzu teaches that military advantage is not static. It changes over time. The general who is winning today can lose tomorrow if they become complacent or if the situation changes. Conversely, the general who is losing today can create conditions for victory tomorrow through strategic preparation. This teaches humility to winners and hope to those currently losing. Success is never permanent. The moment you think you've achieved final victory is the moment you stop preparing and adapting, and your downfall begins. Companies have learned this lesson painfully. Kodak was dominant in photography, but failed to adapt to digital photography. Nokia was dominant in phones, but failed to adapt to smartphones. They had advantages, but became complacent. Their complacency allowed competitors to surpass them. Conversely, companies that remain hungry and continue to innovate, continue to adapt, and continue to improve stay competitive. Microsoft seemed vulnerable during the internet revolution but adapted. Apple seemed finished multiple times but came back. Amazon continues to evolve and dominate. The power of unity and common purpose. Throughout his work, Sun Tzu returns to the theme that unified forces are more powerful than fragmented forces. An army that is united around a common goal, that trusts their leadership, that understands why they're fighting. This army is formidable. Conversely, an army where soldiers don't understand the purpose, where there's conflict between leaders, where different units work at cross purposes, this army is weak even if it's numerically superior. The general builds unity through clear communication. They explain why the mission matters. They treat soldiers fairly. They share in the hardship. They celebrate victories together. They hold people accountable consistently. Through all these actions, the general builds trust and unity. In business, this applies directly. A company where employees understand the mission, where they trust leadership, where different departments work together toward common goals. This company outperforms a company where employees are just collecting paychecks and departments work at cross purposes. In families, relationships, and communities, the principle is the same. Unity of purpose is more powerful than any individual talent or resource. The importance of knowing your limits. Sun Tzu teaches that a wise general knows not just what they can do, but what they cannot do. They don't overestimate their capabilities. They don't take on challenges that are beyond their capacity. They recognize when they should retreat, when they should wait, when they should seek alliance with others. This is a form of wisdom that our culture doesn't always emphasize. We emphasize growth, ambition, and reaching for more, and those things are valuable. But so is knowing your actual limitations and operating within them intelligently. The general who recognizes that their army is outnumbered and the terrain is unfavorable might choose not to fight. This is not cowardice, this is wisdom. Throwing away an army in an unwinnable situation is foolish. Preserving your forces and fighting at a more favorable time is intelligent. In business, knowing your limits means not taking on customers you can't serve well, not entering markets you're not equipped for, not expanding faster than your operations can handle. In personal development, knowing your limits means being realistic about what you can achieve in what time frame. Ambition without realism leads to burnout and failure. The role of rewards and punishments. Sun Tzu discusses how generals should use rewards and punishments to maintain discipline and motivation. Rewards should be given generously when soldiers perform well. This builds morale and motivates others to perform well. Punishments should be consistent and fair when soldiers break rules or fail in their duties. The key principle is consistency. Soldiers must understand clearly what behavior is rewarded and what behavior is punished. If rewards and punishments are arbitrary or inconsistent, soldiers become confused and cynical. If they're consistent, soldiers understand the system and respond appropriately. In modern management, this translates to clear systems around recognition and consequences. Employees who perform well should be recognized and rewarded. This builds their engagement and motivates others. Employees who fail to perform should face consequences. But the system must be consistent. Favoritism and arbitrary punishment destroy trust and engagement. The same applies to parenting, leading communities, or managing any group of people. Clarity, consistency, fairness, and appropriate rewards and consequences are how you build an effective system. The concept of momentum in business. Let's return to the concept of momentum and explore how it applies to business specifically. Momentum in business is when everything is working together. Your products are selling, your team is engaged, your market position is strengthening, your brand reputation is growing. When momentum is in your favor, everything becomes easier. New customers come through word of mouth. Good talent wants to work for you. Partners want to collaborate. Media wants to cover your story. Each success makes the next success easier because momentum is working for you. The company with momentum can take risks that companies without momentum can't take. Why? Because they have margin for error. If an experiment fails, it doesn't threaten the whole company. Companies without momentum are fragile. One failure can be catastrophic. This is why companies that are winning try to keep winning. They keep moving. They keep innovating. They keep capturing market share. They understand that momentum is fragile and that stopping is dangerous. Conversely, companies that are losing find that it gets harder. Each failure creates negative momentum. It becomes harder to attract talent, to attract customers, to maintain partnerships. This is why struggling companies often try to acquire their way out of trouble or try radical pivots. They're trying to generate momentum through external means. The lesson is to protect and exploit momentum when you have it, and to focus on rebuilding momentum when you don't. The danger of overconfidence. Sun Tzu warns specifically about the danger of overconfidence. A general who believes they cannot be defeated becomes careless. They stop preparing. They make strategic mistakes because they believe they are too strong to fail. History is full of examples of overconfident powers being defeated by hungrier competitors. The Roman Empire seemed invincible but ultimately fell. Microsoft seemed untouchable in the 1990s but lost dominance in mobile. Companies that thought they were too big to fail have failed. The antidote to overconfidence is maintaining a realistic assessment of your actual capabilities and remaining hungry. The best competitors are always slightly paranoid. They assume competitors are improving. They assume the market could shift against them. They remain vigilant. This paranoia drives preparation and innovation. It keeps them from becoming complacent. It keeps them humble even when they're winning. Understanding different types of terrain in business. Earlier we discussed the 9 types of terrain in warfare. Let's apply them specifically to business competition. Dispersed terrain in business is when your organization is fragmented. Different divisions aren't aligned. You haven't unified your approach. In this situation, your first priority is consolidation. Bring your organization together around a common strategy before you engage competitors. Facile terrain is when the market is open and any competitor can move freely. In this situation, the advantage goes to whoever maintains the best communication and coordination. You need to move faster than competitors, adapt faster, and coordinate your organization better. Contentious terrain is when both you and competitors want the same thing, maybe the same customer segment or market position. Whoever reaches this terrain first and establishes dominance has the advantage. Speed matters here. Open terrain in business might be a new market where there's plenty of room for growth. In this situation, you want your most agile, fastest-moving teams operating. Bureaucracy is a liability. Speed is an asset. Focal terrain is when there's a critical choke point that controls everything. In business, this might be a critical supplier, a distribution channel, or a key partnership. Control of the choke point gives you power over the entire market. Serious terrain is when you're committed to a market deeply, and retreat would be very costly. Here you need superior morale and commitment because you can't easily exit if things go wrong. Difficult terrain is a challenging market where success requires superior knowledge. You need to know the terrain better than competitors. This might mean understanding a specific customer base deeply, understanding regulatory environments, or understanding local cultures in geographic markets. Hemmed-in terrain is when you're under pressure from multiple sides. Your flexibility is limited. In this situation, you often need to go all in on something. You make your team understand that this is make or break. This focus can drive extraordinary performance. Desperate terrain is when your survival is at stake. In this situation, you understand that you must win or you're finished. This clarity and focus can produce miracles because everyone is fully committed. The flow of competition through time. Sun Tzu teaches that competition evolves through phases. Initially, when an advantage is first established, it's enormous. You have capabilities competitors don't have. You have market position they don't have. You have momentum they don't have. But over time, competitors learn. They copy your approaches. They develop their own capabilities. Your advantage erodes. You must continue to innovate and improve, or you'll find yourself overtaken. This is the cycle of business. A company innovates and gets a first-mover advantage. That advantage allows them to build resources, brand, and customer relationships. For a time, they dominate, but competitors eventually learn and catch up. If the original innovator stops innovating, competitors surpass them. The companies that remain dominant over decades are the ones that keep innovating. They understand that the market is constantly evolving, and they must evolve with it. They don't rest on past success, applying strategic principles to overcome adversity. What do you do when you're facing a more powerful competitor? When you're at a disadvantage? When the odds seem against you? Sun Tzu's principles give guidance. First, understand yourself honestly. What are you actually good at? Where can you be better? Don't pretend you're something you're not. Second, understand your competitor honestly. What are their actual strengths? What are their actual weaknesses? Where might they be overconfident? Where might they be vulnerable? Third, understand the situation. What's happening in the market? What trends are emerging? Where are the opportunities? Fourth, position yourself where your strengths meet your competitors' weaknesses and where the situation favors you. Don't compete on their chosen field. Choose a field where you have advantage. Fifth, build momentum through early wins. Prove your concept works. Build customer testimonials. Build proof that your approach is working. This momentum attracts talent, customers, and capital. Sixth, remain adaptable. As you learn what works, adjust. As the market evolves, evolve with it. By following these principles, companies that start at a disadvantage can overcome larger, more established competitors. It's not about being stronger, it's about being smarter. The principle of economy of force. Sun Tzu teaches the principle of economy of force. This means using the minimum force necessary to achieve your objectives. Don't waste resources. Don't fight unnecessary battles. Concentrate your force where it matters most. An army that spreads itself thin across a wide front is weak everywhere. An army that concentrates its force on a narrow front can be overwhelming on that front. The concentrated force is more effective than the dispersed force. In business, this means focusing your limited resources on what matters most. Don't try to serve every customer. Don't try to be in every market. Focus on your best customers, your best markets, where you have the greatest advantage. This is hard because there's always temptation to expand, to serve more customers, to enter new markets. But expansion without focus dilutes your impact. A company that is exceptional in one niche is more powerful than a company that's mediocre across multiple niches. The role of intelligence and espionage. Sun Tzu devotes significant space to intelligence gathering and the use of spies. In modern business, this translates to market intelligence and competitive intelligence. The companies that excel understand their markets deeply. They understand customer needs. They understand what competitors are doing. They understand emerging trends before they become obvious. This intelligence allows them to position themselves advantageously. How do you gather this intelligence? Through customer interviews and feedback, through competitive research, through industry analysis, through tracking market trends, through hiring people from competitors who bring insider knowledge, through partnerships that give you visibility into different parts of the market. The investment in this intelligence is worth far more than the cost because it informs better decision-making. The importance of clear communication. Sun Tzu emphasizes that the general must communicate clearly with their army. Soldiers must understand the mission. They must understand their role. They must understand what success looks like. They must understand the strategy. Ambiguous communication creates confusion. Confused armies are ineffective armies. Clear communication aligns everyone. When everyone understands what they're trying to accomplish and their role in accomplishing it, they move together effectively. In business, this means leaders must communicate strategy clearly. Employees must understand what the company is trying to accomplish. They must understand how their role contributes. They must understand why the strategy makes sense. Companies with clear internal communication outperform companies where employees are confused about strategy and priorities. This is why regular communication, transparency, and clear articulation of strategy are so valuable. The cycle of victory and renewal. Interestingly, Sun Tzu recognizes that achieving victory is different from sustaining leadership. You can win a battle and still lose the war if you don't consolidate your position. After achieving a victory, the wise general doesn't simply celebrate. They consolidate, they secure their position, they repair damage, they reorganize their forces. They prepare for the next challenge. Many companies experience this. They have a successful product or service, they win market share. But then they fail to consolidate. They don't invest in customer relationships. They don't improve their operations. They don't prepare for new competitors. Then a new competitor arrives and takes what they've won. The companies that sustain leadership are the ones that consolidate after victories and prepare for the next challenge. They treat victory as the beginning of a new phase, not the end of the struggle. The necessity of adaptation. Throughout the art of war, there's a tension between planning and adaptation. Sun Tzu teaches that you need both. You need a plan, you need strategy, you need preparation. But you also need to be willing to adapt when reality doesn't match your assumptions. The general who has a plan but rigidly adheres to it even when circumstances change will be defeated. The general who adapts constantly without any plan or strategy will be chaotic. The ideal is to have a clear strategy while remaining flexible in execution. This applies to business, personal development, sports, any domain where you're pursuing goals in a complex environment. You need a strategy, you need direction, but you also need to be watching what's actually working and adjusting based on reality. The power of discipline and order. A theme that appears constantly in the art of war is the power of discipline and order. An army with discipline is organized. It moves efficiently. It responds quickly to commands. It maintains its formation under pressure. An undisciplined army is chaotic. It's slow to respond. It loses formation under pressure. It's ineffective even if numerically superior. Discipline isn't punishment, it's systems, it's clear expectations, it's consistent training, it's organization. Through discipline, ordinary people become an effective force. In business, discipline manifests as clear processes, consistent standards, and organizational structures that enable effectiveness. A company with discipline outperforms a company that's chaotic, even if the chaotic company has more talented individuals. In personal development, discipline manifests as consistent practices, clear goals, and structured approaches to improvement. The person with discipline achieves more than the more naturally talented person without discipline. The integration of physical and mental preparation. Sun Tzu recognizes that military success requires both physical preparation and mental preparation. An army must be trained physically. They must be strong. They must be able to endure hardship. But they must also be mentally prepared. They must understand the mission. They must be confident. They must be willing to face danger. The army that is physically strong but mentally weak will break under pressure. The army that is mentally strong but physically weak won't have the endurance to sustain effort. Both are necessary. The same applies to any domain. An athlete must develop their body, but they must also develop their mind. Visualization, confidence, mental toughness, these matter. A business leader must have good analytical skills and strategic thinking, but they must also have emotional intelligence and communication skills. The timeless nature of strategic principles. What's remarkable about The Art of War is that despite being written over 2,500 years ago, its principles remain relevant. Why? Because they're based on fundamental truths about human nature, about competition, about how to achieve goals. These principles worked in ancient China. They worked during the medieval period. They worked during the Industrial Revolution. They work today. They'll work tomorrow. Because the underlying principles don't change just because the technology or industry changes. A better understanding of reality always beats less understanding. Strategy always beats brute force. Positioning always beats poor positioning. Unity always beats fragmentation. These truths are timeless. Conclusion: the path to victory. We've explored the art of war in depth. We've examined principle after principle. What's the overarching lesson? The path to victory, whether in warfare, business, sports, or personal development, is through superior understanding combined with excellent preparation and strategic positioning. It's not about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about being the wisest. The pathway is clear. First, develop deep understanding of yourself, your opponent or competition, and your situation. Second, develop strategy based on this understanding. Third, prepare thoroughly. Fourth, position yourself advantageously. Fifth, execute with discipline and flexibility. Sixth, maintain morale and momentum. Seventh, adapt based on what you learn. Those who follow this pathway win. Those who skip steps, who don't understand their situation, who don't position strategically, who don't prepare thoroughly, suffer defeats. The beautiful thing about these principles is that they're available to anyone. You don't need special talent. You don't need special resources. You need to be willing to think strategically, to prepare thoroughly, and to understand reality accurately. This is why the art of war remains relevant. It teaches timeless principles that anyone can apply. It teaches that victory comes from wisdom, from strategic thinking, from preparation, and from understanding. As you move forward in your life, in your career, in whatever challenges you face, remember Sun Tzu's teachings. Understand your strengths and limitations. Understand your competition and your situation. Position yourself strategically. Prepare thoroughly. Execute with discipline and adapt with wisdom. This is the path to victory. This is the timeless wisdom of The Art of War by Sun Tzu. If this exploration of Sun Tzu's masterpiece resonated with you, if you found yourself thinking about how these principles apply to your own life and challenges, then you've gotten value from this audiobook. Here's what I want you to do right now. First, smash that like button. Seriously, your like is a signal that helps us bring more of these deep, transformative audiobook explorations to creators like you and learners like yourself. Every like tells the algorithm that this content matters. Second, subscribe to Audiobook Gist. Every week we take the most influential books in human history and we extract the actual wisdom. We don't do surface-level summaries. We go deep. We explain how these principles apply to your modern life. We help you become the kind of person who thinks strategically, who understands human nature, who can win whatever challenges you face. Subscribe right now so you never miss an audiobook that could change how you think. Third, I want to read your comments. Drop a comment below telling me which principle from The Art of War hit you the hardest. Was it the idea that victory is determined before the battle begins? Was it understanding the importance of terrain and positioning? Was it the principle that you should know yourself and know your enemy? Was it the emphasis on adaptability? Tell me which principle you're going to apply first in your life. I read every single comment, and I'm genuinely excited to see which wisdom clicks for you and how you're going to use it. Fourth, share this audiobook with someone who needs it. Someone who's struggling in their business because they're fighting the wrong battles. Someone who's competing with brute force when they need strategy. Someone who hasn't yet discovered the power of strategic thinking. Send them this. Share it on your social media. Help us build a community of people committed to strategic thinking and continuous growth. Finally, turn on notifications. Turn on the bell icon. This way you'll never miss an audiobook that could shift your perspective. We're in the business of bringing the greatest wisdom from the world's greatest books to you in an audio format. Great books change lives. Our job is to help you access that wisdom. Thank you for spending this time with Audiobook Gist. Thank you for letting us be part of your growth journey. We genuinely appreciate it. Now go out there, apply these principles, position yourself strategically, prepare thoroughly, understand your situation, and then execute with discipline and flexibility. This is how you win. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, keep growing. This has been The Art of War by Sun Tzu on Audiobook Gist.